Okay, now we're going to introduce the if structure, and we're going to see where the Boolean expressions and values relate to the if structure. And this is where we begin to program our computers, or our programs, or our computers to make decisions based on certain criteria. So we're going to label some things, so make sure you have your notes out and that you're going to be labeling things that I will show you in just a second. So first of all, you need to know what the word if structure means. If structure, we'll use that term. It's a single alternative if, which we're going to deal with right now, and I'm not going to explain what that is until later because right now it wouldn't make any sense. So here's an example of an if structure. So first of all, in this program, the purpose of this program is that we're going to enter scores from a test that has 50 points possible. And so we'll enter scores like 40, 36, 25, whatever. So whatever we order or enter, this program is designed to figure out the percentage and then respond to the user in a certain way depending on whether they passed or failed. So we have a variable that we'll say is points earned. So let's see. Okay, I've set up some memory locations here. So I'm using abbreviations because it takes too long. So we have we declare a variable called points earned, and it's right here. And then we've declared a named constant. It's got all caps, got the word final in front of it. So this is a named constant called points possible, and I've abbreviated it here. And this is the number of points on the test, so we wouldn't want to change that during the program. Now, if we want to do a 60-point test, we could change it right here in this declaration. So right now it's 50, so it has a value of 50. And then we have later on, uh-oh, I just noticed a mistake. No, I didn't. Okay, later on we're going to declare a variable called percentage. So I have that up here as well. So we've done this declarations, and now we've prompted the user here to enter the points that they earned. And then here we're going to read. So this reads the user input, so and then it stores it in points earned. So let's just pretend that they typed a 40. So in points earned, it's going to store 40. Alright, so then we have the variable percentage that's being declared, which I already have located up here in the memory locations, and it's a double. So what we're going to do, we're going to evaluate what happens here. Now we're going to incorporate some things that we've covered before. We need to remind ourselves how to do these things so we can use them in our programs. Now just for teaching's sake, let's assume that we don't have this in here. Points earned is called, and its variable or its value is 40, so we have a 40. And then you have points possible is called, that has a 50. And then you have times 100. Now, of course, order of operations would say that since these are all on the same level, you would multiply from left to right. So if we multiply 40 times, or divide 40 by 50, an int divided by an int is what? And you should know that answer. An int divided by an int is going to be an int. We know that. We've already learned that. That's what it does in Java. So if we were to do this in the calculator, 40 divided by 50, you get a 0.8. But we said that the answer has to be an int, and so Java will look at this division calculation and say, okay, we're going to take this decimal and cut it off, and it's called truncate, if you remember. So what it does is it takes the decimals, cuts them off, truncates them, and you're left only with the integer, because an int divided by an int has to be an int. That would make the percentage or the decimal representation would be 0. And then if you took 0 and multiplied by 100, well, you'd get 0. So this would not work. This is not going to work in its current, without this double thing that's happening, which we'll talk about here in a second. So that's why this is a problem. Okay, so now let's come back to this and see that now we're showing this double, and this is called typecast. Now it's more important that you know what this is going to do rather than what its name is. But if you can remember the name of what this is called, that's good. This is a typecast operator. And so what this does is this double is going to turn ints into doubles. Doubles turn floats into doubles, which we haven't really dealt with before. It turns ints into doubles. It would turn a long into a double. So this is a typecast. It casts a spell and says, you will now be a double. And so now the question is, which I asked in class, is this double acting on points earned, or points earned divided by points possible, or is it acting on the entire thing? And so some people got this and they said there are no parentheses here. It's not doing anything like this, where you would do all of this inside here first and then apply the double. No, that's not happening. Instead, what's happening is it's going to act only on the item next to it, because there's no parentheses otherwise. And so it's only going to act on points earned. So we said points earned is 40, which is an int. And so again, this double typecast is going to cast a spell on 40 and say, you will now become a decimal. And so it makes it 40.0. And this is important because now when you take 40.0 divided by 50, you're taking a double and dividing it by an int, and the result has to be a double. And so when you do the calculator, or in your head, you come up with 0.8. Well, it's a double, so it's acceptable. This is accepted. Okay, and that's what makes this work. And now then we multiply, so it's really 0.8 times, then it's going to be times 100, which gives us 80, which is really what we're looking for is the percent, not as a decimal, but as a number. And so it'll store in here, in the percentage, will it store 80? Well, percentage is a double, so it's not going to store an int. It's going to store it as a double. It's going to add the 0.0 to it. Alright, so the point is now is percentage has 80. So after the user typed in 40, the program is designed to calculate its percentage. And now the percentage is going to determine whether or not we say congratulations, you passed. So here's where the computer has to make a decision. Do I tell them congratulations, you passed, or did I not say anything at all? And so this is what we mean by a single alternative. We're only going to give one alternative. We're going to tell them they passed, or we're not going to say anything. And so now we come to the if structure part. So the if structure is going to be here to here. So this right here is called the if structure. And I'm not going to take the time to write all this out. So this is if structure. The if structure starts with this statement. And this statement has a name. It's called an if statement. This is all very simple. Alright, so again, I'm not going to write this all out because of time, but this is an if statement. Well, what does an if statement have? It starts with an if, and then it has an expression in here that uses a relational operator. So this right here is a Boolean expression, which we've already talked about. The Boolean expression is between parentheses. And that's going to be important. So here's an if statement is where the if structure starts. Now remember, Boolean expressions are evaluated to be true. So this Boolean expression we call the variable percentage, which has an 80.0 in it. So the question is 80.0 greater than or equal to 70? Well, it is. And so what's going to happen is this Boolean expression is going to be evaluated to be true. So remember, every Boolean expression is evaluated to be true or false. If it's true, then the compiler is going to jump inside these braces and it's going to execute this line of code. So this is if true, then it jumps inside those curly braces. Okay, so this statement that it's doing in here, we have a name for that too. You got to have a name for everything. So this is called an if clause. You can have one if clause, you could have two, you have 12, 200, you could have many if clauses as you want. But these if clauses are between these set of braces that is where the compiler goes if the Boolean expression is true. And that's simple. If it's true, jump in here and do this. Now this would make sense because if they typed in something that made this true, they got greater than 70, it would make sense is to say that congratulations, you passed with a percentage. If they typed a 60 or a 50, or if they entered in a score that got a 50%, it would not make sense to say congratulations, you passed. So the computer has to make a decision on whether to tell them congratulations, you passed, or to not say anything at all. Now, after this if clause is done, now it jumps out of the if structure and goes to the next line down. Remember, the if structure ends with the ending curly brace in here. It'll always end with a curly brace. That will always end an if structure. Okay, so then it would go here and say, would you like to try another entry? All right, so that's what happens. Now, there's one more thing that could happen here. All right, we could have another situation here, and this is where the computer has to make a decision. Let's say the person typed in a 20. If they did a 20, if this was points earned, let's say was 20 instead, and then it does all its calculation and it turns out that the percentage is actually 40%, 40.0. Then what's going to happen is when it comes to this if statement, it's going to say 40 is greater than or equal to 70. Well, that is false. And so if false, well, what does it do? So if true, we know what it does. What happens if it's false? If it's false, it actually bypasses the if clause. It pretends it's not there. We haven't done this yet. So it's just going to bypass that and go past the if structure. All right? That's what it does. And there you go. And so it would just say, would you like to try another entry? And I don't know what happened here. Anyways, so if it's false, it bypasses the if structure and goes on to the next line of code. Okay, so now let's go to JGrasp. And so if you're in the position, copy if structure demo starter from Canvas to JGrasp, and then follow along with the video if you can, or just watch the video demonstration is fine. But so if you're in a position to do this, go ahead. So let's go ahead and go. Now we're at the top of page where I shouldn't want to do that. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to end the show and say that. I'm going to go to here. So if structure right here. And so this is just so you see what happens. So you can see how the scanner, or that the problem, this is what we have in our notes. and you can see how it works. So we are going to compile it, and then we're going to run it. So just like we said, if we typed in a 40, what's it going to do? It's going to say, congratulations, you passed with a percentage of 80.0, and thank you for using this program. Don't pay attention to this. I didn't mean to have that in there. Okay, so, well, what happens if the user types, this is where, we're going to make the computer's going to make decisions. If we typed a 20, it's going to just say, thank you for using this program, and so it's totally skipped the congratulations because congratulations isn't important, and you programmed it to not go in there because it made this Boolean expression false. Now, just to bring up something really quickly, let's say that the test was out of, let's say it was out of 73, and which we can do, and we're going to run this now. I want to just show you one thing. If we enter the points earned, and let's say it was out of 73 and they got 61, it calculated the percentage, but notice how the decimal or the percentage has a long decimal. And this is where we're going to, later on, we're going to use decimal format, and we're going to show how we can fix this and make this look like what we want it to do. So anyways, if you have this program, you can try different things with it and see how the computer is making decisions, whether to skip the if clause or to do this if clause. So let's go ahead and go back to our notes now. And we're at the top of page 3. And at the top of page 3, we have some things. Actually, we've already done some of this stuff. Here's the if structure example. And so we want to make sure that we label the following, which we did. So we already labeled the if statement. We've labeled the Boolean expression. We have the beginning and ending curly braces, which are right here, which you can label. And then you've got the if clause, which we said was here. So we've already done that, so let's just move on. The next thing is the if structure example here, and notice what an if statement contains, which we've actually done this too. It includes if, which is not capitalized. It has a Boolean expression that's inside parentheses and is evaluated as true or false. The other important thing, it has no semicolon at the end, and so I just make that mention because there are certain statements that don't have semicolons, class headers, method headers. Also, if statements do not have semicolons. And so if the Boolean expression of the if statement is true, if clauses are executed, which we've already talked about. If Boolean expressions of the if statement is false, the if clauses are bypassed. If you want to make up another word, that's fine, but you could say skipped, but overlooked, whatever, but they are bypassed, and the compiler goes on to the first line after the if structure. And so you got to know where the if structure ends. Starts with the if statement and ends with the curly brace, the last curly brace. The next thing is an if structure begins with the if statement, which you already said, and ends with the ending curly brace. I don't know what happened here. So ends with the ending curly brace. And then curly braces are optional if there's only one if clause, and that's something I haven't mentioned yet. So if there is only one if clause like this, we actually could do away with these curly braces. They wouldn't have to be there. If somebody programs something and they don't have curly braces, the only thing that the computer will do if this is true is it will do the first statement it sees. After that, after that, it will not. That will not be part of the if structure. Curly braces are required, however, when there are multiple clauses. So if we had more than one statement, then we would have to include the curly braces in there. Some programmers always use curly braces. In this class, let's always use curly braces. Just get used to it. And then, and that's what I do, and it just is easier to read. Pay attention to indentation. So the curly braces are underneath the I in if, and then you do the tab to get into the if clauses. Okay, we're going to have a quiz on our next class. And so here's the questions. Identify and list the lines of code that make up the if structure. Here's the answers. I'm giving you the quiz, the answer key, and everything. So you need to know that. You need to identify or list the parts of an if statement. You need to know what the program will do if the Boolean expression is true, and what it will do if it is false. So make sure you read the answers really carefully, and these are things that you want to memorize. And if you memorize these things before we move on, you will be in good shape. So that's it. Be ready for that quiz, and there's an assignment, Chapter 5.1, that is due for our next class. Thank you. That's it.